Hey everybody, this is Ryan from the Elite Wing, and I'm sitting here with Anton from Rec Age.
How you doing?
I'm doing very fine. How are you?
I'm a little bit tired. But,
Yeah?
making it through the weekend. It's been awesome so far.
Yeah, AdeptiCon's always a lot of fun.
Yeah, this is my favorite event. I can't imagine going to anything else and having as good of a time, for sure.
That's awesome. So, tell us a little bit about how you started Rec Age. Like, why?
So, I basically had the concept of wanting to do a story-based narrative tabletop war game.
Okay.
And I approached my friend Matt, and I just had a real basic concept. Like, the concept is, all the rich and powerful on the world left Earth and leave everybody else behind a couple hundred years in the future, and then society falls apart.
Okay.
And then what you see by about the year 2500 is what happens in the world of Rec Age, which is, a smattering of high technology, but a lot of people, throwing rocks and spears at each other. So there's a little bit of something for everybody in it, I think. And I really loved the concept. I was really passionate about it. And, so we've spent the last 4.5 years working on it, basically.
Awesome. So, tell us a little bit about the scale of the game. Is it a large scale?
It's a skirmish. It's a 28mm skirmish game. So an average crew is going to be between 3 and 5 models, up to 7 or 10 for the drifters, who are a much more populous faction. They're nomadic raiders, so there's a lot more of them in general. They're going to be lower quality, sort of like a Russian conscript army or something like that, or orcs if you're for 40K.
Yeah. Why did you make the choice to go with a skirmish level game as opposed to a big game?
I want it to be accessible to people. I want people to play it. I don't want people to have to dump, $200, $300, $400 just to play the game. I want to, we see torrents of the PDF. We try to get it out to as many people as we can of the rule book.
So you guys actually torrent out your rule set?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
I want people to play it. I didn't spend all this time to do it so it could sit on a shelf somewhere and nobody plays it. I wanted to get it in front of as many people as possible. We've had pretty good success with getting people interested in it just from seeding torrents.
Wow, that's really
I'm
impressive.
a fan of I'm a fan of the concept of torrents in general. Information being free. I don't think that it should be locked up in a cage or something. So, kind of a personal philosophy, I guess.
Yeah.
So, we've got our rule book out. We're writing a bunch of source book material for the RPG end. It's a tabletop game and an RPG, and also a hybrid. So you can play my focus is narrative-driven tabletop combat. Not just combat, but encounters.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about how you envision a typical Rec Age game going. If it's the tabletop and the RPG element mixing together, how do you envision that working?
So you have your characters that kind of are advancing as you go along. You could play with multiple people on the tabletop. A lot of times you'll have a narrator, which is kind of like a game master, dungeon master type guy, and they will basically be driving the story behind it. And then the other players are going to kind of take part. So just like if you're playing a role-playing game, you've got one person who's kind of making up the story arc.
Right.
So you've got your narrator making up the story arc of the tabletop game, essentially. So you've got a story-driven game, and everybody takes part in that, and you level up your characters, you make different decisions, and that can affect the outcome. You gain your resource units, which are your points that you use to build up your characters, buy new equipment, buy additional upgrades for your communities. Most of your characters will come from a community based on one of the factions. We've got 4 main factions right now. The Reclaimers are tech zealots, who believe that technology is the means to ascension. They use a lot of unreliable energy weapons that can blow up in their hands or whatever. And through doing that, they believe that they attain a higher plane of consciousness. Then we have the Drifters, who are nomadic raiders, kind of like your Mad Max style, just hooligans, essentially. No hockey gear or anything like that. But we have the Stakers, who are pragmatists. They take a piece of land and work it. They also trade with other communities, so they'll kind of stay in one place and kind of defend it. And we have the Stitchers, who are kind of vampiric body harvesters. So they're one of their special abilities is to actually get into base-to-base contact with another character and harvest their organs, and they get resource units that way, which they can then use to lengthen their lifespan, and then of course buy more equipment and things like that. So yeah, and then I've got 3 source books that are in the works: Chicago, which is called Switch City in our game, LA, which is called Shangri-La, and then the New York area, the greater New York City area. That one will probably take a little longer, and hopefully those will be done, 9 months.
Okay.
At the rate I go, it's not quick,
okay.
to be honest.
So, conceivably, you could just be sitting around a table with a bunch of friends with your rule books and some dice and play like a full-on RPG.
Yes, correct.
But
that's actually what we've got a couple of groups doing that. The guy who's writing the New York area source book, he's actually playing a straight pen and paper RPG.
Okay. But then if you're going on a mission or something like that the narrators decided on doing, then you've set up the table.
Right, exactly. You can do any encounter, on a tabletop. So be that a trade envoy where you meet somebody else, and your novice characters may lose their cool and draw their weapons and ruin it, and then you get into a firefight, or it might just be, an information gathering thing, or you're digging for technology, whatever you're doing.
Okay, that's cool. Let's see. So take us through some of the development process you went through to get through Wreck Age. How did you develop the game system?
A lot of trial and error.
Okay.
Lots of error. So I wanted to do a D6 system. I feel really strongly that's the way to go for accessibility, and I just like rolling a lot of D6s too. I feel like you get a lot of people who are turned off by funny shaped dice, and my initial goal was to make something that's really accessible to the general populace. With the RPG, I think that's there's potential for that because the system is fairly straightforward and simple. I don't know if because they're unpainted models. I don't know if that necessarily translates with the tabletop game.
Okay.
I would like to believe that anybody could pick up a model and paint it, but we live in a culture where people want instant gratification.
Right.
I started with that basic premise in mind. I wanted it to be a D6 system, and have the tests based on whatever the attribute is. So you roll the number of dice equal to the attribute. There's not a lot of figuring it out. You just roll it, and that's what you get. You don't have the dice together. You just take the highest result. If you get multiple successes, some tests meaning multiple successes, and it was just a lot of playtesting, a tremendous amount of playtesting. Working out different things that might work, that didn't work. We scrapped large sections that just didn't. They were clunky.
Okay.
And then towards the end, got a bunch of great ideas and put them in. I don't know another tabletop game where you can yell and intimidate someone across the board with a megaphone, for example. A lot of little cool effects like that. Things that you can affect the play in, not just by shooting at somebody.
Okay, so even in the tabletop game, there's a whole lot that you can do. You're
you
almost
can interact with objects. Absolutely.
That's really interesting. That definitely brings in a lot more of the RPG element to the tabletop, as opposed to other games like Malifaux and some of the other really big games. It really is based on these are the things that you are able to do.
Right.
And that's it.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. I think you can. My vision for how I want to play, and this is how I wrote the game. Essentially, how I want to play is to be able to interact with every piece of terrain on the board in some way. Maybe not a hill. You can roll down the hill or whatever, but if there's a shack, you can interact with it. If there's a computer terminal, you can interact with it. And really, I tried to design it very open-ended, so you can go as in-depth with that sort of thing as you want to. And to me, the more the better, because it makes it more fun. If you play a game where you're, skulking down the corridors, and the light might go out, and you have to sneak past somebody, and that to me is very thematic and a lot of fun. If you're just standing across the table and shooting at each other, that can be fun too. But I feel like you're limited in terms of the type of. it breeds power gaming. And I mean, as a former tournament player, I understand the appeal of wanting to crush your opponent at all costs. But
winning is fun.
Winning is fun. No, but some of the best games that I've had were games where I got slaughtered because I learned so much from them. And I think that's kind of a minority attitude.
Okay.
In a tournament setting. I just want to be able to play a game where I can sit with my friends or even strangers and just have a good time and laugh and have fun. Because ultimately, we're playing with little toy soldiers. It's not a life-altering experience. It's a hobby. It's supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be something where you're stressed out about it. And from the this may be a segue into some of your other questions, but from a company side, there's enough stress as it is.
Right.
Trying to manage all of the different aspects of running the company, of creating the game, of marketing the game, of getting it out to people, of getting it in front of people, of getting somebody to sit down and play a demo, taking 15, 20 minutes of their time out of their day. And if you don't treat their time as valuable, then you're not going to get them interested.
Right.
You know what I mean? If you're just running, here, stand and shoot. Here's the mechanics. Like that's important. It's important for them to understand the mechanics so they can play. But you want to give them a little bit of a hook so it hopefully sparks their creativity a little bit, and they can say, I can do something new with this that I've never done before. That's ideally what I'd like to see happen. And I don't know how effective I've been with that, but hopefully, at least a little bit. I've gotten some people who say they're interested in playing specifically this weekend.
Awesome.
Trying to target people that I think will stay with it. You know what I mean? That's really what my goal is I want people to stay. I think you heard me talking to the gentleman right before he came over here. I don't care if you don't buy any miniatures. I want you playing the game because I spent a lot of. I put my heart and soul into this game. I want people to play it, and that's why we torrent. That's why we do all this other stuff because I want people to play it.
Yeah, and I don't know if you made note of that before. This game, you've got a line of miniatures for it, but you can use miniatures of the appropriate theme or whatever. From
even
anything.
if you wanted to switch a scale, I think I've included simple conversions for different scales in the
That's awesome.
book. So if you want to play 15 or 6, or I don't think I included anything else, but you can do a conversion.
That's cool.
Whatever.
That's cool.
And that's the bottom line. I want people to play. So whatever form.
So do you think that the wide open nature of the game might push some people off?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I think that some people want. I don't want this to sound negative, but they want it handed to them. You know what I mean? They want something where they don't have to invest a lot of energy or effort into creating an experience that's their own. It's like, okay, well, I am going to set up across the board, and I am going, and that's a certain type of personality that wants that. And I can't compete against some of the larger companies. I don't have the monetary funds to do it.
Right.
So I'm doing it the way I know how, and like I said, again, the way that I would want to play. And if you're not doing it the way you would want to play, if you're just trying to market it the way you think are going to sell units or whatever, it's going to come across, I think. And I think you can tell which games are marketing to people and which games are like, you can tell their heart and soul is in the game, So, and those are the games that to me are more fun to play.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. So you ran a Kickstarter for Rec Age, and what did you draw out of that?
Enough money to do our entire initial line. I think it was 12 models, and then our rule book took a little while, and we kind of grew off of that. We've had enough sales, luckily, to be able to expand the line a little bit.
Awesome.
I think it was our first 12 models in our rule book is what we essentially paid it for.
Okay.
Which was very expensive. It was a lot more than I thought it was going to be. Between concept art and sculpting, casting, etc. I mean, it costs a lot of money to get miniatures out on the table.
I don't doubt it. So, what do you wish you had done differently based on that knowledge?
I guess I wish I would have reached out to people and built up more players first, but it's kind of like chicken and the egg situation. if you don't have a game, how do you market it to people? If you don't market it, you have to be able to kind of have a playable game for people to get interested in it in the first place. So I feel like it's going to be a slow process, to really become successful. Kickstarter is a start. It's Kickstarter. It's not the end all be all of a company. If your company's not sustainable, Kickstarter will get you started, but that's all it's going to be. You keep going back to the same well over and over and over. I mean,
it has the potential to get you up in the air, but then it just doesn't keep you in the air.
Yeah, and you're also, training the people that are into the game to behave. And I think this is a systemic problem with Kickstarters is people want to have the next new thing, all the time. And there's no room for just kind of sitting back and like enjoying a game for a while. Because next week there's a new Kickstarter that you just pledge $100 to or $300 to or whatever. It comes, you see it, you're like, okay, that's cool, and you put it on a shelf, or you throw it up on eBay in a year or something. And, there's no long-term. I just don't think it's long-term. The potential for it to be sustainable over a long-term period of time.
So you have been noticing that people have been buying Kickstarter games, and then
you can sell a Kickstarter game.
Yeah,
almost anything.
Right, but then not actually like a community doesn't come up around it very well.
And my game is community based. It's based around communities. So that transfers into how I want the game to actually be played. I want people to take part in it and write their own adventures. And if you're from a town in the middle of nowhere, put that in the game. Play in your own hometown and write. You've got plenty of information, to work from, and just build your own game. And I feel like it's a lot more. Some of the role playing games like Werewolf or all those games. That's one of the cool elements of them is that they have Chicago book and this, or like Shadowrun, for example. You play in Seattle, you're playing in your hometown, so you kind of it's in their world. You've got that framework, but then you pull back your own experience and you kind of like, okay, I'm going down Main Street. I know Main Street. Here's this shop, but it's blown up. Or I hate my neighbor. Okay, you blow up their house. Whatever. You can take out your aggression and just have a good time with it. You know what I mean?
Okay. So in what ways are you trying to build up community in your local area, but also around the country or the world?
So locally, I'm trying to get a bunch of. So we've got a bunch of different gaming groups scattered throughout the city and suburbs. It's not a lot. I'm from the city. There's not a lot of people there's not a lot of places to play in the city. So I'm trying to get people together, either a monthly or bi-monthly thing, and actually play not just my game but other games too, and just game and just get together because, like I said, there's 5 or 6 different groups that are basically doing the same thing. We're all doing the same thing on some level, in terms of we're playing tabletop games. But when you're only playing with 4 or 5 people, you start to get a little run down after a while sometimes, and
there's no new blood.
Yeah, and I think that's important, and not just that, but I want to do some games at like a local comic store. He's expressed interest in bringing in tabletop games, so I want to talk to him about potentially doing this event there. It's a central location. There's not really a lot of gaming in the city. I've talked to a bunch of people already at the convention, like saying, hey, I'd like to do this. Let's maybe bring it together. And on a larger scale, we run a Pioneers program, which is essentially our version of the promotional team.
Okay, it's like Henchmen or the Outriders.
So we've got people that. A couple people around the country that we send them promos. They paint it, so they buy a box or a couple boxes, paint them up, show us that they painted them up, and then they run games in their store, and we support them. So we'll send them promos, send them freebies. You run a tournament, we'll give you prize support for it, stuff like that. And that's it's going to take a while to get a lot of traction with that. We've got I think 4 or 5 people, something like that. I don't know how serious all of them are, but again, it ebbs and flows.
Yeah, it's it's a lot of work for you guys, but I've known a few henchmen, and that is a full-time job as well.
Exactly, and there's not a lot of glory in that one. You
Right.
know what I mean? So you got to really. So anybody who I can tell really likes the concept, I try to kind of talk to them and say, like, hey, you know, would you be interested in running this? And I'll do whatever I can. You know, whether it's RPG or tabletop.
Yeah.
To just have fun with it and hopefully build something out of it. You know, because you know, if nobody wants to play, there's no point in doing it. You know, ultimately,
Right.
I don't want to push it. You know, I mean, I think I told you yesterday. I mean, I can sell a box set to almost anybody in this room if I really wanted to.
Right.
You know, but if it just sits on their shelf, it doesn't do any good to anybody.
Right.
You know, I mean, it puts a couple dollars in my hand, but ultimately, I don't. You know, I mean, I want people to play.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, that's the reoccurring theme here that I keep talking about. I want people to play the game.